everyone. Welcome back to the Stay-at-Home Bookkeeper Academy Podcast. We are excited to be here today because, one, I've got Bill here with us. Hey, Bill, how are you?
Good day, everyone. Really looking forward to our guest this afternoon.
And we have Rob Hamilton. Hey, Rob, how are you today?
I'm well. How are y'all doing?
Awesome. So, Rob, tell us a little bit about you and your company.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Rob Hamilton. I run the go-to-market teams at Digits. And at Digits, what we've built is what's called the AGL, or the world's first agentic general ledger. Our goal is to automate all of the tedium in accounting with AI baked right into the ledger. So you don't need to bolt on other tools to do these weird integrations and so on, where you kind of become this Gumby, where you're like a glorified kind of like IT consultant for a lot of your companies trying to aggregate data from a million different places. It's all built in. So we automate the bookkeeping, like tedium, and then we automate the reconciliations, and all of that tedium then takes the time for month-end close to go way, way down, and allows you building a bookkeeping business to really focus on building those relationships with your customers and making sure that they continue to see the value and success of their company tied directly to the work that you do for them.
Awesome. I love that. All right, Bill, any questions there before we dive into just normal questions?
Keep in mind, our typical student doesn't come from a background of finance, accounting, bookkeeping. They just have a desire to
Mhm.
grow and build their stay-at-home business. They see the opportunity in today's world for small to medium business owners of how to support them through bookkeeping. You know, what would be your biggest advice to someone getting into this space and utilizing tools like yours? A lot of times they get overwhelmed with just the tools and the resources and things that are out there as they get
Yeah.
started. What's some advice you would give them?
Well, I mean, if I'm honest, I'm sympathetic towards the position. I mean, it's hard to start any business, let alone a business that's intended to help business owners to run their business, right? So you're almost, because a part of what you're selling is trust when you're doing the,
Exactly.
where it's like you're selling the verification. Like, hey, I'm doing the work, or the work is being done. You can trust me to validate that that information is correct. And where that value of the bookkeeping comes in, where if you go to the person who's filing your taxes, in that case, that you can give them something clean, and that there aren't questions about it, or you have to navigate a lot of the weirdness around, I don't, know what's going on with my finances. And so from an advice perspective, I think a lot of it is being really clear about the service that you want to provide and help these business owners. That's going to help you define kind of like the tool stack and what you use to provide that service. Because if you come in and you're kind of like thinking, I'm just going to make sure I'm providing kind of like these verified financials on top of the bookkeeping, or I'm going to be doing the bookkeeping, that changes how you might approach your work, versus I'm going to be an advisor to this business owner. And if I'm honest, the advisory side, we might get into this later, is probably more where people should start to lean as more and more things get automated on the bookkeeping side. But that also changes how you kind of like assess how you provide those services in the back end. But that's it. And that, the reason I bring that up is that's more of a foundational mechanism of like, why are you starting this business and what do you want to provide? And making sure you have a clear definition of that is going to be foundational to all the decisions that happen later.
Love
Thank
that. You really led into to what was going to be my follow-up question that, you know, AI is the theme anywhere. I mean, theme everywhere you go. So many of our students ask, is AI going to replace bookkeeping? Why am I going to get into this if ChatGPT can be someone's bookkeeper, things like that? So,
Mhm.
where do you see that, and where AI sits in the realm of bookkeeping and those type of, and I love how you're talking about advisory services, things like that.
Well, I mean, what's interesting is like AI will absolutely augment what the role of a bookkeeper and accountant is today. But we are very much of the belief that there's going to be a human in the loop for the foreseeable future, or a very long time to come. And so ultimately, and the reason for that is ultimately the context and the experience that a human can bring is not going to be replaced by AI systems anytime soon. Now, will there be large parts, as I mentioned, of what is considered bookkeeping and accounting today that will be automated? Absolutely, yes. But does that mean that the human doesn't need to be involved anywhere or across any of those processes? No. So we constantly benchmark just contextually against the latest models. And while GPT-5 is the latest and they spent untold billions kind of like training up that model, the latest models are on par with like outsourced bookkeepers who don't have context on an individual business, but in accuracy and correctness and things like that. And this is because it's reflecting like general accounting knowledge on the internet. But as you look at that, if you specialize in within an individual industry or within your client, you learn more about that business and how things are done, your level of correctness is going to be miles above what the models are doing today. And they've really reached kind of like a peak or a threshold around what you can do with the generalized knowledge at that point. So like in that world, what that means is we want to partner with folks like within the industry and the profession who are going down those routes to partner with them on how to be the human in the loop in that verification layer. Because if you think about the structure, if we're going and connecting to business accounts and credit cards and kind of like aggregating all of that data and context from different places, in that world, how do we enable you as the professional to validate that work so you can provide the trust layer that you're selling appropriately? The business owner isn't going to trust the AI to go file their taxes appropriately for a long time to come. Like that's where that layer comes in with the bookkeeping community.
Yeah. So one of the questions that, we get our people that come into our academy, they're brand new, or they could also be seasoned. We have such a wide range of people. Would you say that Digits is for everybody? Is it for a certain level? Where would you say Digits fits into someone either new coming in and they're starting a booking business? Do they use them, or is this more someone more seasoned, or kind of in the middle?
No, I mean, maybe this is a selfish answer, but I would
No,
say
I know.
that it's for everyone.
Okay.
You might use it differently if you're more seasoned from like an accounting perspective on the things that you do, but broadly we view ourselves as an SMB medium-sized business ledger. So if that's who you're supporting, it's probably easier to start fresh, sign on clients, leveraging Digits from the beginning, and then you grow with them on top of the platform versus, hey, they're already on something. Why do I need to go through the pain of migrating them? Not to say we do make that very easy to migrate folks over. If you have an existing business that you're looking to kind of like move into be more of like AI native in the AI era. But broadly, if you're starting a brand new business, there's actually no better time to adopt Digits AGL as the kind of like the baseline of your automation. And frankly, it might allow you to scale a little bit more simply than you otherwise would, because a lot more of those pieces are going to be automated. And that's really where it's going to put you ahead of the game versus other firms that are going to be needing to deal with like question marks of migration. The other like quick anecdote side note is that you don't just get the automation on the bookkeeping and accounting side with Digits. We've actually built a much more consumer grade design layer on top of the finances that operators deeply, deeply appreciate. And so what we found is that accounting firms that use Digits as a part of their sales process, they actually leverage the kind of like dashboards and the, pretty interface as like, hey, if you work with me, you get this as a part of like my deliverables for you. It actually increases the conversion on a sales process for a lot of business owners downstream because it's not something they're like, I'm used to a black and white PDF every once in a while, and it doesn't answer any of my questions. So if I get something like this, it's a much better experience for the downstream operator too. So there's benefits across. I know, Bill, we were talking before where you mentioned a lot of what you guys focus on is actually helping bookkeepers, not only in the, hey, how do I be a bookkeeper, but how do I sell? How do I market myself? And we
Exactly.
found that Digits really becomes a part of that flow for a lot of these firms that are really leaning into building these AI native practices.
Well, I think I like the because you answered the question. I was going to say for anyone, right, that's starting because I think sometimes, and Bill does this a lot with our coaching on the calls, because people sometimes, if they're brand new into a business, especially in bookkeeping, they're kind of still afraid of AI, even though a lot of us have really taken AI to heart and we lean into it. If they're brand new, they may be a little nervous. How easy is this for someone that's brand new to be able to implement pretty quickly? I mean, could you share how you find this for someone new versus someone that's already got their booking business and this is just something that they're adding as another layer versus like you said, you start it when you begin it, it makes it simpler, but is it user friendly to that point?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of goes back to something I was touching on. Is we've spent one of the big things that like Digit's founder Jeff has focused on is he started his career as an engineer at Apple, and so a lot of Apple's kind of like design ethos is baked into how he thinks about the world. Subsequently, he started a couple companies. One sold to Box, and another one sold to Twitter. And in that whole time, he was kind of like struck by the data quality difference between like engineering and operations that have like real-time visibility. Who's on my website? What buttons are they clicking on? And then on the finance and business operations side, everything was like weeks delayed, and then you have an output that doesn't necessarily answer the questions of the operator in a way that is like intuitive for someone who doesn't come from a finance and accounting background. So we've actually built a lot of what you're talking about, Deanna, as like a baseline of like this needs to be easy to understand, but still give the power to like manage the nuance appropriately that an accountant might need, but still be simple enough that like an operator or someone who's not coming from a traditional finance or accounting background can operate it and use it effectively. And in that world of like how easy is it to use and set up, we probably couldn't have made it easier. Starting at probably one of the things you talk about, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is the onboarding process actually is pretty painful in the accounting world, because you're dealing with sensitive data sources. So even a lot of our approach is focused on like, how do we make that simpler as well? So if you're just like, okay, I sign on a new business, you can actually have them log into Digits, link all their bank accounts, credit cards, etc. We just automatically start pulling all the transactions in. If the bank allows it, we actually also pull in the statements. And so that at that point, the AI will automatically book things, and then it will flag the things it has low confidence in to you as that verified kind of like trusted source in the accounting side. So it's being proactive around the things you need to pay attention to. So if anything, I think it actually brings you along in the process a little bit more than you needing to feel like I need to go be trained in a bunch of different ways before I know how to use this thing.
I love that. What is something fun? I like to ask things that are kind of that you wouldn't expect. So I'm going to bear with me here a little bit. What is something fun about Digits working on the inside that nobody would know about?
That's a great question. I mean, there's actually one. There's one. I don't know if this qualifies as fun, so you can like tell me if this is a
Okay, well, let's go with it.
fun meter thing or not, or if it's just like a normal culture thing. But I think it aligns with the bookkeeping and accounting industry quite a bit. Is that Digits was actually founded as a fully remote business in 2018 when we started. So it wasn't like a product of COVID as it happened with like a lot of
Right.
other businesses. And in that world, we're in 14 states spread across the US, and like every like I work in a shed in my backyard. We like took it literally was our tool shed. We took the rakes out and we decided to put a human in it somewhere along the line. So I have my own little hobbit hole. Like when I stand, my head's in the peak or whatever. And so like but what we do is that we do full team on-sites where everyone flies to one location for a week once a quarter. And
Yep.
so then we all get together and we do like longer term planning and big architectural things on the engineering side on like the big projects we're going to tackle and take on. And a lot of the accounting firms that we work with are actually functioning in a similar way. And so every time I talk to an accounting firm, it actually allows us to almost like knowledge share, which ends up being fun. I'm like, how do you approach this? And what are the structures you've built into your company to help enable and like give these, remote employees agency and feeling like they're involved in a long-term vision, which I think there's a synergistic aspect to that on how we're approaching it towards how a lot of bookkeeping and accounting firms are approaching it as well.
I love that. I love that you guys get together like that too. That's great. Bill, did you have any other questions here as well?
So when the 800-pound gorilla in the room, everybody knows and talks about is QuickBooks Online, and that's what majority of companies are using out there. QuickBooks Online. A lot of people that are joining the academy, even if they're not bookkeeper that have come from it, they know QuickBooks. They hear QuickBooks. They hear the term, things like that. So
Absolutely.
talk about Digits and the Digit solution compared to QuickBooks Online and the AI capabilities and things like that you've built in to enhance the role of a bookkeeper and supporting their clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm going to pre-apologize because this might end up being a slightly long-winded answer. So
No,
feel
it's
free
okay.
to
Do it.
so
No,
feel
but I
free to
guarantee you that's what the majority of people are going to ask,
Right.
and they're going to know is
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying.
absolutely. And so like with that in mind, feel free to interrupt at any point if you have any follow-up questions or otherwise. Because like I could potentially go on a tangent here, but like broadly, I mean, the way we like to think about it is like admittedly, Intuit's built an incredible business and they've built incredible staying power and they've iterated quicker than you would normally see really big companies being able to move and kind of like iterate their product. But the way that we kind of like define these pieces and look at it is where Intuit really defined that like desktop native era. Let's call it like 20 or 30 years ago. Might be longer. Date math is not my strong suit. But you had Zero then come in and kind of define to this more like cloud native era. And the way that we view digits is being defining the AI native era. And the way that you almost like look at the difference here is like the cloud era was more of like a migration of workflows. It was just like more of a change of where you do your work. Whereas the AI native era, and this is the part that like sometimes can feel scary, but we need to kind of like digest it appropriately as a group and figure out the right way to move forward, is the change to AI native era is actually a change in the actual work that's being done, which is a fundamental difference between those kind of like era definitions. But if you're thinking about it as digits, like what is AI native and how do I build my firm to take advantage of these tools appropriately? And I'll be selfish a little bit here to focus on like digits differentiation. What digits has built starts even like as low down as a database layer of the business. So if you the way to think about QuickBooks or Xero all the way up to even like a NetSuite or an Oracle, which is more kind of like larger scale ERPs, they're all fundamentally relational databases. So sorry if this gets like slightly technical.
No,
But
let's dig in.
they were all architected 20 to 30 years ago, and they treat each transaction basically as just like a row in a database. So they treat it as text. So let's say that your client like goes and takes an Uber ride. QuickBooks is just going to see that as UBER. It just sees text. It sees whatever you type in. So you type in those transactions, and you've probably noticed that they sort of just sit there in the database. And when you run a report, it prints the data back to you. And you, of course, like can aggregate by accounts and stuff, but it doesn't actually understand the data. It doesn't really know what Uber is. And so what Digits has built is what's called a semantic knowledge graph of every business. So rather than seeing every transaction as a random string of text, Digits natively understands like who's a vendor, who's a customer, what's a bank account, what's an expense category. And through all this, we basically map everything in kind of like this n-dimensional space, like not to bring, physics into it, but it all gets mapped and strung together. And we can understand the money flow within each business. And that's what allows the AI to build this understanding, the semantic level understanding of the money flow and how it can be so accurate at booking transactions. So I mentioned earlier that we are constantly like double checking ourselves and running. We have kind of like a white paper we put out publicly, which I can actually send both of you afterwards if it's helpful for your community, but that benchmarks all of the latest models against a gigantic database of over 20,000 transactions we put together. And where Digits is able to categorize things in the latest update we did 96% of the time correctly across those transactions, the best models are only reaching right about 70% is the threshold, which is also where human bookkeepers, when we benchmarked them, roughly fell. Human benchkeepers were a little bit better, but obviously in that world, that semantic layer is what allows the categorization to get so accurate. So in that world, we also, because we're building these models internally and proprietarily, they're secure. So we have direct access to all the context, and we're not shipping kind of like all the bank feed data and chart of accounts and everything to OpenAI, where you lose the decision-making architecture of what's going on. And the benefit of that as well, because all of these are predictive models versus just like an LLM, it's impossible for it to hallucinate because accounting is predictive and it's not generative. So our model architecture kind of eliminates any of those chances for hallucination. And it gives us the ability of when you take an action in the product, it automatically trains the model to kind of like retake that action the next time we see something similar. So all this comes together into a package that then allows you to have to take less action. You're not using digits, you're more supervising digits. And that's, I think, the fundamental change in the work that's going to happen over the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years, is the folks who kind of adopt these things and learn the layers of trust and supervision that need to happen to verify all the work that's happening. Those are the folks that are going to be able to kind of like build these differentiated business models and bring on clients that maybe the other firms won't be able to because of the work required.
That's a good answer.
I
Again,
love that.
sorry that was
No,
very
it's
long-winded.
great.
Yeah,
That was great. So when I'm a new bookkeeper, I just started my business. I don't know much about bookkeeping. With a lot of the intuitiveness and AI built into digits, in practice, it could be a tool or a solution that you pick up quicker than QuickBooks because a lot of the intuitiveness is built into it.
Yep.
Especially, QuickBooks covers companies that are $30 million a year companies all the way down to $100,000 a year companies, where most of our students, they're going to be dealing with that small to medium business owner, where 50% of what QuickBooks does, they don't need, and it gets into the way sometimes.
Absolutely. And that's it's a balance. I mean, because we also have businesses that are fairly large, on digits as well. So like you can scale your small business if you kind of like have a, company that you can scale with appropriately. But that doesn't mean that you have to make it hard to use the product alongside of being able to support that scale. Obviously, these things happen where you end up having, feature bloat at these larger enterprises. It's actually why it makes it really challenging as a software company to start on like the enterprise and then work down to SMB, because then you're having to peel things back. Where we've started is this baseline SMB layer. What do we need to build for you to then grow with us and on top of the software product? And to your point, I think there's basically like there's a change in the things you need to learn when you start with digits. Whereas, with other kind of more legacy ledgering systems, you probably have to spend a lot of time just learning, how do I use this product? And like, where do the things exist for me to do XYZ thing? It's not that that doesn't exist or doesn't need to happen with digits. You have to learn any new software, but we've simplified it in a way that we're actually hopeful that there's less time needing to spend there. And you can spend more time on like, what are the verification checks and quality control things that I need to be doing on kind of like these books, so I can talk to these clients in an educated way and elevate my services that I might provide, and subsequently also differentiate myself when I'm selling into the marketplace to all these business owners around like, what value can I provide you?
So what kind of, and what I love, and I sat through a couple demo videos that I saw on YouTube that you had, and sometimes getting into new software can become overwhelming, and then you shut down. As far as digits, training, support, things like that, what kind of resources are out there for someone that would be embracing this solution and utilizing the solution?
Yeah, we have quite a bit out there. We actually have our own, it's at academy.digits.com. And so Megan Reed, who runs our like training and enablement team, she's put together kind of like a whole academy of classes. And the very first one is just called Mastering Digits. I don't have the exact numbers of how long it takes, but we've tried to structure it to be pretty straightforward. And she talks through like a typical month-end close. How do you do that in digits? What are all the things you need to know and the ins and outs and all the above? So we've actually put together a really solid set of resources. It even in the secondary and like this level 2 and level 3, it even goes into some of the stuff you've talked about, Bill, which is like, we go into the basics of AI. Like if your client is asking you about these things, like how do you talk about it in a way that's educated so that you feel like you know the right way to kind of like talk about it to downstream clients as well, and that they trust that you know how to use these systems. So we have quite a bit of resources out there. Obviously, the more that you're growing, we can obviously lean more and more in with you through our partnership program. So if you've gone through and done kind of like some of our training materials, you've signed up, created your account, and you're like, oh man, I brought on 2, 3, 4 clients and I'm kind of like growing, I want more support. We actually have additional like in-person training resources that can definitely work one-on-one with firms as well around kind of like learning how to use the software and growing effectively. And, as you grow with us, we actually have kind of our own directory where if an operator comes in and signs up to use Digits independently and they reach a threshold where they're like, I don't know what accrual is. Like, what am I supposed to do here? We can direct them to our directory of accounting firms that are kind of like trained on Digits and know how to use it as well. So lots of different mechanisms of support there, depending on wherever you are in your journey.
So I would like to know what's in store, any new changes, anything fun that may be on the horizon for 2026 that you're able to share for Digits.
Absolutely. I mean, I think our focus is to continue to lean into automating this month-end close process where all this kind of like tedium ultimately exists. So there's a lot of like really fun things that have come up that are things that we're excited to continue to automate and think about. But most of it is focused in that kind of like month-end close process. How do we automate more and more of those features, functionality? So I can't speak to any specifics, but at the same time, I know that there's a lot of super exciting things on the horizon for us to go to. Sorry, that was probably a disappointing.
Oh, it's okay.
For your
I mean, I guess
purposes,
it would just be what's the fun, like if in your world, what's a fun change that you already see and know that's happening in 2026?
well, I mean, from my perspective, the fun thing is to see firms adopting the software and being successful on top of
Right.
it. Like that genuinely is one of the more kind of like exciting things here. Like we literally, just as an example, like this happened. I've just pulled up a Slack message so I could read it. Is we were emailing a couple of our kind of like partner firms who wanted to send kind of like a holiday gift or whatever to them. So we're asking for like some addresses for folks. And their response was, it's very kind, but you don't need to send a gift. I think the system itself is a gift, frankly, which it's like
I
even
love that.
just like seeing that reaction is
I
like
like
not
that.
only is great for us to hear, but like our team who spent like years toiling away, kind of like building the software also like loves to hear. And so that's what to me is really exciting and fun because also you see firms who use the tools in ways that you would have never expected either. So just lots of that's what's fun on the horizon for me is to keep seeing folks be successful and iterate.
So you touched on it briefly at the beginning, but would like you to go a little bit more in depth on, you talked about advisory and
Yeah.
how the industry is going to start evolving with enhancement and tools that would lead to more bookkeepers getting more involved in the advisory capacity, the advisory role, and how that could help business owners. Go a little bit deeper into that. I'd love for you to just go a little bit deeper in the opportunity behind advisory services in
Yeah.
general when it comes to the bookkeeping industry.
Yeah. Candidly, I do think the move towards advisory will be necessary over
Mm.
time. Like I imagine that every bookkeeping firm is going to need to have some layer of this, which also is a challenge because that starts to bridge into needing some aspect of financial or accounting background, which is there's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario there on kind of like building this business and all the above. But at the end of the day, most business owners are not coming into starting and running a business with any amount of finance or accounting background at all.
Yep.
So you need to put yourself in that frame of mind as you're thinking about this as it relates to the services that you can provide. Because honestly, any level of insight is more than what they have now. A lot of these business owners are just, it's not that they're running blind, but it's more like, hey, there's money in my bank. Like, I'm going to keep moving forward. And as long as they have something that allows them to file taxes, they're not really thinking about it otherwise. So, any level of strategic thinking or like, hey, questioning, like, hey, we could spend more here or whatever there is a step change from what most business owners are providing today. And that's where Digits has focused some of our efforts. It's not really AI, although a lot of companies like are branding this type of thing as AI, even though it isn't. But we run brute force statistical models on every single client within Digits, and we will proactively surface insights across vendors, customers, categories, and things like that. So for a bookkeeper who's leveraging Digits, we actually are helping you kind of like take some of those initial steps in providing advisory services. Not everything is that it brings up is going to be something you want to talk about with the client, but it might flag like, hey, you just spent 150% more in this category than you traditionally do. I just want to bring that to your attention Mr. Business Owner or Mr. Client, that in case we need to talk about like, is there something that we need to be thinking about longer term for your business? Is this going to be a trend that's happening moving forward or a one-off instance? Like even those types of conversations, a lot of business owners aren't thinking kind of like these steps ahead. So if we can at least help you take the initial steps into providing those things, that can obviously evolve into something deeper over time.
Yeah, and I love how you position that in. And half of being a business owner, especially in this industry, is skill and knowledge. The other half is trust and relationship.
Yep.
And where the advisory part comes in is the trust and relationship. And I like to tell our students that don't see yourself as a contractor, see yourself as a strategic growth partner to that client and position yourself like that, that your goal is to help them see visibility beyond the checking account and how you can help them, especially when they hit the challenges time at acquiring a new business or growing and things like that, so that they get out of that world of managing from the checkbook and really managing from a strategic growth perspective. Awesome answer. Thank you so much. Sorry about that, Deanna.
No, you're fine. So here was a question that I saw, and I meant to flag it because I was wanting to ask you about it, and I was like, I'm just going to ask on the podcast. Um,
Fire
how,
away.
yeah, so how real time is the sync between digits and like QBO zero?
Well, so there's probably like something to define here is we are actually a full replacement of QB over zero.
That's why I was
So,
asking you. So the reason why there's a second layer to that, I'll let you finish there.
yeah, and I can maybe give a little bit of context in case like other folks in the audience have a similar question is over time, what we have built and we have had kind of like a reporting product on top of QuickBooks in the
Mhm.
past as well that I think there's an aspect of the community that is familiar with. It did require kind of like a sync with QuickBooks. But and that still exists to help serve kind of like the community who use that as a time. But our focus moving forward is in the full kind of like ledger. And so we do have an easy ability to bring data over from some of those legacy systems into digits, but it doesn't require an ongoing connection on top of kind of like those legacy systems in order to use digits. The way that it works is if you're starting from scratch, you just connect to the bank accounts, credit cards, and payroll systems. And then that's real time. We automatically pull all of that information into the system and categorize it as it comes in. So,
Well, you probably answered that because this same person was asking this question, and I think this is going to be very helpful to a lot of people here. She had asked the same question, and she said, "Well, can I import historic data for cleanup and catch-up work?"
yes.
So your answer would be yes, right?
Yeah. And
And
it's actually one of the more fun use cases. Sorry, I'll be quiet.
no, the reason why I'm asking you that is because cleanup is where the bookkeepers make the most money. And if you guys are simplifying that and making it that much easier by using digits to do cleanup work, it just makes that such a really good opportunity they can use in their bookkeeping without having to be stressed about it because it's just right.
Yep,
So that's the reason why when I saw those questions, like I'm going to ask you on there because
I
I
love
think
it.
some people are afraid of doing the cleanup, but yet if you guys make that so much more simpler, then they could be adding more zeros to their monthly income by having a system
Exactly.
like digits, right?
Yep. Oh, you're 1,000% right. And actually, that's one of the most exciting use cases of digits. So I love that you brought that up naturally, honestly. We had a firm just the other day. It wasn't yesterday, like the prior message, but basically was like, look, I had a 4-year cleanup that normally would take me like over a week to do, and I did it in 4 hours in digits. And so
Right.
like
Wow.
so like in that world, like for you doing cleanup work and all of the above, getting someone to a starting point is just so much faster because like we don't need to get into the nuances of like how much history any given bank gives you, but like some of them give you 2 years, some of them give you a couple months or whatever. But let's say that you come in and connect the bank accounts and credit cards and payroll systems for any given client, and they haven't done a cleanup, and we'll just use 4 years as the example. 2 years of that data will just get pulled in from the bank, and we'll use our standard chart of accounts, book everything to that chart of accounts. And then for those other 2 years, you can either go log in and pull the bank statements and just drag and drop those onto digits. And we'll extract all the data and then book it appropriately right there in the same way that we booked all the other ones. And so what that does is gets you a starting point where then you still need to go, and it's not going to be perfect. You still have to go in and do quality control checks. I don't know what industry this company is in.
Right.
They might have specifics within their chart of accounts you need to build out appropriately as well. But Digits helps with all of those pieces to do like quick vendor reviews, bulk change actions, where you can come in and change 300 transactions at a time. Where like this vendor, all of it needs to be somewhere else, right? And so you can do those things really quickly and easily in a way that just is not possible in legacy systems today.
Yeah, and I think that was the key was that like especially since I know Bill, you and I we work with a lot of people that are newbies coming into the academy and cleanup work can be a little daunting. It can be still scary
Yeah.
because you're not quite sure of like what that's going to look like or trying to clean up the last 12 months or last 24 months of something.
Mhm.
But yet what I saw, and that's why I was asking you was that
Yeah.
they used digits and they were saying, "Oh my goodness, this
I
was
love that.
life changer."
Yeah,
That was
I love
their
that.
words. Their words were life changer.
I'll take. See, these are the exciting
So,
things for me.
you
That's
know,
really fun. Yeah,
right? Because it made the cleanup work so easy and they were fairly new.
yeah.
And so for them, they were like, I was able to add an extra zero because it was just awesome, right?
Yeah.
So I say that because I don't think people realize all the ways that you can use it. And we talk about in the academy, we talk about on our webinars of how amazing cleanup work is to a bookkeeping
Mhm.
business. And if
Yeah.
you guys can simplify that even more and make it quicker, it's worth
I,
every bit of it.
I love that. And you know what? And this is where you asked about like what's exciting about Digits. Like we didn't necessarily plan for that to be kind of like a highlighted use case. And that's the part that again is exciting. You see how people use it,
Mhm.
and we can then lean into that where it's like, okay, well, now we see this happening. How can we make it even better? And how can we like lean in and hear from the community on, yes, it made your cleanup 10x better, 20x better, but like what could make it 50x better? Like, and let's have that conversation and figure that out. But one of the cool downstream aspects of all this is that you might, you know, as much as cleanup is a good business, there's also a lot of companies that are real dumpster fire when they come in. And so
Yep,
like to
that's
the
true.
point where you're like, I can't even price this. Like I can't even take this on. I'm going to turn this away. And a lot of what this has also done is it's unlocked you being able to take on clients that you traditionally may have just like said, I can't help you. And so it
Mhm.
opens up the aperture of the businesses that you can bring in and help out as well, which is a kind of like a downstream benefit of some of this too.
Well, that was good. I feel like that was like one of those drop mic moments right there because the people, if you're not paying attention to using digits for your business or cleanup work, like where you can add multiple zeros, like then that's what you should be doing. So, Bill, let's leave with it. What's your final question to Rob? I feel like we did really good today. Rob, you were so incredible today sharing this wealth with digits and
It's fun.
how it can be
These are
applied.
fun conversations. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to put your entrepreneur hat on and especially in starting a business and growing a business and what would be the best piece of advice you could give someone who's getting into just starting a business? Yeah, I tell people, if being a business owner was easy, the world would be full of nothing but business owners and no employees. But living through it, going through it, what would be your advice that you would give students that are starting this journey on building their own business?
I mean, part of it is just taking the leap in the first place. So, I
Mhm.
mean, if I'm honest, like that that ends up being one of the more challenging steps. Like I think back to when I joined because I joined Digits super early on as a part of kind of like this journey, and when I accepted kind of like my offer to come into Digits, like my wife was pregnant with our second child. We were kind of like a seed stage. Digits was a seed stage company. We're sitting there. We're like, what am I doing? Like and I was leaving Amazon, like a big stable company, right? And so like in that world, like not everyone's leap is going to be the same. Everyone has different life circumstances that you're navigating to be like, is this something I can handle right now? And for some folks that might be a no, but like in this world, I was like, you have to do that self-assessment of, is this the right opportunity? Is this the thing that I want to go do? But taking that leap is sometimes like saying yes, of like, yes, I'm going to go do this. Ripping that band-aid is probably like the biggest probably piece of advice to take that step and to do. That's not to say there aren't going to be other challenges along the way. Those are going to manifest themselves as you go. But I think keeping that optimistic mindset and like making sure that you've gone through that, you can always remind yourself of like, this is why I took this step and why I did this later, because it helps with the challenges down the line, and helps you kind of like navigate the adversity later that sometimes comes up too.
I love
That's
that.
awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, Rob, for joining us today. Thank you, Bill, as well. Amazing questions. Rob, I got to tell you, we are going to be definitely plugging in digits. I know Bill and I will be sending out some information to every single one of you. If you have any additional questions, Rob, where can they find you?
Awesome. Well, one, I appreciate it, and thank you so much for having me. This is a ton of fun, honestly. So
Okay,
had a
good.
great, had a great time today. And obviously, if you all need anything as you dive in, please reach out to me directly, or if someone in your community has any questions, you can at least direct them my way. I don't know if I'm always going to be the right person to answer, but I can always send them to the right person internally to help out. But broadly at Digits, you can just head to digits.com/accountants. That's where kind of like the core accounting partnership sign up flow exists. And it's right on our website. You can just kind of like click accountants and go check it out there as well. But that's where you can come in and sign up to use the product. You can either talk to someone on our team to talk about like what it looks like to partner and scale with us, or you can just go get into the product, play around with it, link your own firm's books you get for free as a part of our partnership program. You can always start there. The other link to check out is that academy.digits.com. And that's where a lot of our training materials exist and all the above on that front. So definitely check those pieces out. And then obviously, from a support and help perspective, we have help@digits.com or support@digits.com. We have a super responsive team there that can help out or direct you in the right way on that end too. So
You are a wealth of knowledge. I love it. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely make sure that we put in below this the link for people to be able to go straight to Digits as well, because we truly do believe in you, support you, and we've worked with you for many years
yeah,
in the past, and it's just been
go
such
way
a
back at
joy.
this point.
I
It's
know
wild. Yeah.
it has been such a joy and pleasure to work. I mean, it's been probably 5 years, and
Yeah.
I really love working with you guys. And now we have the opportunity to share with our community and be able to even bring you in further. So thank you again, Rob, for being here. And Bill, thank you for being here. And for everyone
Absolutely.
else, thank you for tuning in to the Stay-at-Home Bookkeeper podcast. We hope today's conversation gave you clarity, confidence, and possibly an amazing new tool for your bookkeeping journey. So if you loved this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, share it with someone who needs that little extra push to start their bookkeeping business. And remember, you don't need permission to build a life of freedom and flexibility. You literally just have to take the first step. So if you're watching or hearing this, you've made that first step. We would love to work with you here at the Stay-at-Home Bookkeeper Academy. You can reach out to us as well. Please, again, like, share, leave a review, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening. Bye, everyone.